This is an exclusive presentation of WOWO 1190 AM and 107.5 FM, Unholstered.
Finally, it is time for another edition of Unholstered. Hey, everyone. Hopefully you're having a fantastic weekend and you made it through all of the severe weather that we had here in the state of Indiana. My name is Kayla Blakesley. I am just one of your hosts here on Unholstered.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sophia Rosales-Scatina. I'm a captain with the Fort Wayne Police Department, and welcome back to the show Unholstered.
If you haven't been listening and you have no idea, this show is all about law enforcement. This show is all about serving and telling the stories of our men and women in blue. We tell a lot of the stories that just don't often get told. And Sophia, I found myself, this is a real life event that happened between you and I. I found myself, we were chit-chatting and you were talking about Sergeant so-and-so and then Lieutenant so-and-so. And I said to you, I was like, Sophia, and hopefully I'm not the only person, but maybe I am. I don't even know the difference between a lieutenant and a sergeant. I also don't know how a sergeant becomes a detective or how, I'm going to call it, the structure or organization works within the Fort Wayne Police Department. So I said to you, hey, let's do an episode of Unholstered on this. And you said, okay.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing to do because I think I went to a party this weekend and people were asking me, they asked me what I did. And then, someone chimed up, she's a captain. And they're like, well, what does that mean? And
okay, so I'm not alone.
So you're not alone.
That makes me feel better.
When she said we wanted to do this show, I'm like, oh, okay, that actually might be good. I was thinking about how we're going to do this, but.
Well, and something that you also told me very briefly, because it was a very brief conversation, because you were running out and this just kind of, came out of nowhere. But you also said not all departments are structured the same way.
Correct.
And I didn't realize either that promotions are a little bit different depending on which department you're in and ranks are a little bit different. So I also found that fascinating. So I feel like this episode, Sophia, is all about you because I don't even really know how to weigh in on this, but maybe you could just start by breaking down, what level you enter the Fort Wayne Police Department at, and then how you kind of step up from there.
Sure. So after you complete the police academy, you enter what is called probationary period. So for the first year of your employment, you are a probationary officer. So that means you can lose your job at will. Now, they would still have to have just cause, but, if you're not making the mark, they can dismiss you. It gets harder as you go.
What would be some things that would be labeled missing the mark?
Safety.
Okay.
Would be a big concern. If you're mishandling your weapon, if you did something that was just not conducive to our standards here, I don't think we've lost anyone like that. We just don't throw people out.
Yeah.
We try to work with people if there's something that we can do to adjust something. And sometimes it's just a little fine tuning before someone gets it. But so we work with people and so far so good. We haven't really lost anybody in that probationary period that I can recall. So after that probationary period is up, everyone is entered into as a patrol officer. So that's basically just a regular job.
Okay.
We are a union here in town, so we have a police union that kind of garners what we do here and how we move around the department. So
are not police units, not all of them unions?
Not all of them are, no. A lot of them are not. A lot of them are just at-will employees. I'm fortunate enough, though, that we have the union. I know people have their positives and negatives about it, but I will say it's probably more positive because anywhere you go where could be a very highly political.
Mm-hmm. Could be.
Trying to walk a fine line here. It can be very political at times, depending on, who the mayor is, who they appoint as a police chief, and what, if you turn around and you make an arrest where someone really didn't want you to make an arrest, those kinds of things. They happen all the time. We see the YouTube videos of them all the time. So you could be, in some instances, fired from some police departments. You'd have a fight, but still, it makes life pretty miserable for someone going through that. So kind of we have those safeguards in place. And we do have an Officers' Bill of Rights in Indiana. So there are things that someone has to do before they can actually fire you. And most of it's just a due process part. And I think we can all agree that should be afforded to everyone.
When you join the academy or you wake up one morning and decide, hey, I want to be a police officer, right?
Yes.
Like in my line of work in broadcast, we all enter this business and we always have, grand dreams of what market we're going to go to or what kind of broadcaster we want to be, whether that's in sports or news or television, whatever, right? for most people who enter the field of policing, do they have these dreams of, I want to be a lieutenant, I want to be a sergeant, or is it, hey, I want to, because usually when you hear people say, I want to be a police officer, it usually ends there. Very seldom, with the exception of my cousin, he always wanted to be a homicide detective. Then I seldom run into people that say, oh, I want to be a detective someday. You know what I mean?
We do have a lot of that, actually. And for us, a detective is not a rank. So it's just a place where you bid. So we're union-based, it's seniority-based. So the person with the most years on gets preferential treatment over someone with less years. And then we have what we call exempt positions. So our homicide team has exempt positions. That means those are hand-selected people. They do not have to bid. So you can take a younger officer who you see really, really out there working it, and you can bring them somewhere where they might do a little bit of good for that unit.
I don't know if I'm going to get a real honest answer from you or not. But maybe you know what I'm going to ask. How do you feel about this seniority rule? In terms of, let's just use a detective as an example, that role going to someone who has had the longer career versus someone who's young, maybe new on the force, but has every qualification under their sun, every bit of potential to also have that role.
You know, it has its pluses and minuses. When I came on, and I think we said this on an earlier show when we were talking about my story, I think I said, and I think I told everyone that I was actually inversed, which means nobody bid the detective spot for second shift detective bureau, which means I got inversed because I was an R, you know, and as it goes alphabetically. So I was one of the last few people of our class. So I got inversed, and I was stuck for 2 years in the detective bureau at the very beginning of my career. Now, looking back, I can see what a benefit that was, but at the time, I wanted to be on the street. I wanted to be in patrol. I wanted to be doing, you know, fun things and not doing paperwork as a detective.
Being a little bit more active, Yeah,
but man, that position just benefited me so much in terms of what I learned and how to interview and how to put together a felony case and how to do all those things that I think just through my career helped me more than hindered me. So it really was a blessing. But at the same time, as you gain more experience in this department, it becomes very important in those felony investigations because you just learn nuances about people, how they act when they're lying, the body language. It's very rare that we have someone new that has that all. Now, that they may be older. A lot of times we don't get older applicants, just occasionally, and they've always turned out to be really good at the beginning, middle, and the end. But we just don't get a lot of them.
So it probably is a rare occasion that you have someone who's been on the force for 15, 20 plus years. They're more than qualified versus someone who's been maybe 3 to 5 years and also wants the same position. So that by the sounds doesn't really even happen that often.
It doesn't happen that often, but that's where those exempt spots then come into play because we can take, if we see someone exhibiting those kinds of things that we want in those divisions, we can pluck them out and bring them without them having to bid.
What spots are exempt then?
Oh, we have a lot. So vice narcotics are exempt spots, gang, street crimes, homicide, some homicide positions in the Detective Bureau, ASU, our full-time ASU people.
So it sounds like a lot of, I'm going to call them special teams, special units.
Specialty units, yeah. But see, that's where those kind of, the running and gunning kind of officer really kind of brings new energy into those kind of groups where maybe they're just older officers not used to that. And a lot of times I found that with the younger people, they're really into the tech side. And they're really getting into the tech, getting information and just, you know, pulling stuff that, you know, me, I struggle sometimes with tech and my apps, social media apps and I didn't know it did that. And, you know, so
same girl, same.
Yeah. So it really helps. And, you know, and it's a nice blend. It's a really nice blend.
Okay. So then what positions are not exempt?
So basically patrol, your regular detective bureau positions like property crimes, sex crimes. We have obviously patrol, crime scene. Those are not exempt positions. Okay. So there, you know, there's a lot of places to bid and get, and then we have all the quadrants, you know, different shifts, those kinds of things.
Is it openings only come open when someone retires or leaves or something tragic happens? You know, people's life circumstances change, so there's a lot of movement. Okay.
So people come and go. There's retirements. When you add on a new class, you get to backfill spots that were open. So, like as this new class came off probation, this last class that just got off in January, you know, I now have a full first, second, and third shift on Southeast, where I was having a lot of holes before. So,
so
it's
that's
kind of nice
yeah.
that we can backfill those spots with newer people.
Okay, so let's go back to where we were. So you're starting as a probationary police officer after you're out of the academy. How long are you on probation?
1 year.
1 year. Then what?
Then you go to patrol officer.
Okay.
Now you can stay there your whole entire career, and you can move around the department at your free will if you want to, or you can. We have some people that have stayed in the same position their entire career. That position just people like it. And not everybody wants to be.
And I think that's what most people think of when they quote think police officer. They think of that patrol police officer.
Street patrol. Yeah.
Exactly.
They don't think of other positions as well. But detective bureau is the same. You can bid into the detective bureau, and you can stay there your whole career if you choose. Once you're bid somewhere, you don't ever have to leave unless you want to, or unless you're not keeping up with the standards of that unit.
So then, how does a patrol police officer go to or become, lieutenant, sergeant, captain? Walk us through that.
Yep. So the first rank that we have as a merit rank is sergeant. So after 3 years on the department, you can test for sergeant. It is a test. It is a culmination of your test, your evaluations, an interview, and your seniority score. So they're weighted differently, and we have to have these 4 categories by state law. So state law governs our merit system. The percentages are up to each department, but they have to have those 4 categories. So you test for this position as sergeant, and once you get your test score back, then you have your interview, your evaluations, everything's combined together, and you get a score. Then you're ranked on a sheet with who scored what, and then it goes through 1 through however many people took the test. So say 1 through 25.
Okay.
And then they start at the top of the list. When a promotion opens up, when a position opens up, they start at the top of the list. Number 1, do you want it? Yes, no,
I
yes.
see.
Then you're promoted to that. And
So does everyone have to take that test, or
They
again,
do
just
not.
anyone who wants that rank?
Anybody who wants to test
Okay.
can take it. Like I said, you can stay in patrol your whole career, and there's nothing wrong with that. We have plenty of people that I wish would test for sergeant, but they just don't have any desire to do that, and which is fine. But sometimes it's like,
What kind
such a good one.
of duties does the sergeant carry out compared to then a patrol police officer?
So I would say that the first line supervisor is really where, that line is where you need good people, because they're the ones on the street with the officer making those instantaneous calls. And they're checking behaviors. If something's going wrong on the street, that first line supervisor is going to be your first measure of, hey, what's our standard? What's going on? Let's find out. Let's dig in this deeper. And then the lieutenant comes after that. We'll talk about that in a second. But that first line supervisor is probably one of the most important roles on the department.
Is there any distinguishment, which you're on light duty right now, so you've been in civilian clothes. You're not in your uniform, but on your uniforms to tell sergeant from lieutenant? Because I know there's pins and bars. Is there a way to tell who's who without said officer introducing themselves as, Sergeant Blakesley or what have you?
Yeah, so our sergeant has, gosh, this is where you're really testing me, 2 stripes on their sleeve. So they'll have 2, I don't know what they're called. Chevrons, I think.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, no, I know what you're talking
I'm
about.
horrible at this. And then they have on their collar as well.
Okay.
So that will mark a sergeant. Lieutenant is gold.
Gotcha.
And they're marked, I don't know what they're marked with. I think a 3 chevron maybe.
Okay.
I should really know this, right?
Well, you didn't know I was going to be asking about your fashion within the Fort Wayne Police Department. I'm definitely putting you on the spot with that one. But I do know, y'all come in here, and 9 out of 10 times our guests are in full uniform.
Yeah.
And I can't help but notice some of the different bling, if you will, that some have versus others. So that's why I was just curious.
Yeah, so the sergeant is the last silver that you'll see. So patrol and sergeants wear silver. Anything above that is gold. So lieutenants are gold, captains, deputy chiefs, assistant chief, all gold.
Okay, so you go from, probationary police officer to patrol officer to sergeant. Now take us next is lieutenant.
New lieutenant. So once you are a sergeant, you can test for lieutenant. So it's the same process as you went through before as a sergeant's test, except now it's the lieutenant's position. So the test is different. The interview questions are different. But your seniority is based on your time as a sergeant.
Well, do you have to have a certain amount of time as sergeant under your belt before you can test for lieutenant? Oh, interesting.
That position, you don't need to have any position. And I think that that's probably an okay thing, because by the time most people, by the time they're getting sergeant position, they've got 7-8 years on. someone like me, I had like 24. So Mark Gerardo, who joined
Were you
us,
one of those ones that they had to drag? Be like, come on, Sophia, you should test.
No, there were some stumbling blocks along the way. We'll get into those on a later show, I'm sure. But
that, my friends, is called a tease.
but like Mark, he was 20 years before he tested.
No kidding.
It's just, I think you don't get anything before your time. And regardless of how much you test or how much you study and how much you do, I think it's in the
all in
bigger
God's
hands.
timing, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And, you'll get it when you should get it. So you can promote to lieutenant at that point. After any rank, after the rank of lieutenant is an appointed position by the chief.
Okay.
So captain, deputy chief, assistant chief, and then chief. And the chief is appointed by the mayor.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier, and I don't know that many people realize that that's how that works. Same with fire,
Yes.
I believe, right?
Yes.
So that's why...
City.
Yes,
Yes.
correct. So that's why when you said getting political, like at the end of the day, it really can be quite political, whether we want it to be or not.
It can be. And, people are people. They're human beings, police officers included. We this whole show is about that.
Yeah.
And people have biases. And whether it's political, whether it's religious, whether it's gender, people have biases. And sometimes they show up in the workplace when they shouldn't. And unfortunately, that happens. It happens in every field.
So really, again, city, as you said, city,
Yes.
fire and police care greatly about who is the mayor of Fort Wayne in this example. Do you find often, though, which we haven't really had the changing of the guard in a while here in Fort Wayne, but I know you have obviously been with the Fort Wayne Police Department when there has been a change at the top. Do you find as soon as that happens that a lot of times a new police chief is appointed, or is it, we're just going to kind of keep things the way they are? Do you find many disruptions, I guess, from when the change of guard does occur?
We've had long-running tenures of mayors.
Yeah,
the
we
last
have.
2 mayors we've had. We've seen some changing, and I think it was just aging out a little bit. And then someone maybe that got in and just did it for a few years, wanted to retire. But now we're always interested in who's going to be the next mayor. Because regardless of where you stand politically, I will give Mayor Henry props. I mean, he supported us.
He's a
through the
huge supporter of our police.
entire
Yes.
protests things, and where he didn't have to, and other mayors were buckling and defunding their police departments and stuff, and he stood with us and fought the fight. And I will say we came on top of that fight. We came out the winner. We just are going to continue doing the things we were doing before. It just took a lawsuit and a lot of money for them to figure that out, that what we were doing was right. So, there's always that kind of unknown for any mayor that comes in. Like, what are they going to do with the police department? Because it is an appointed position at chief, and who you pick as chief matters.
Absolutely.
It matters.
Yeah.
So and it matters to the morale of your department as well.
Yeah, I just don't know if many people realize that there was such a stake in the game for fire and for police.
Yeah, I don't think they do. I think sometimes, civics is sometimes lost on some people, and that's okay.
Yeah.
If it's not your thing, it's not your thing. But I think they get us confused with the sheriff, and they think that the chief is elected. Nope, the chief is appointed, sheriff is elected.
Yeah, I get that a lot on my end. When people ask questions during an election, I'm like, no, this is different. This is not the same thing.
That's, I'll bring in sovereign citizens. That's why they don't deal with won't deal with city police officers, but only will deal with sheriff's departments, Allen County Police Department, because they're elected into those positions. We're just appointed.
So then how does the Fort Wayne Police Department compare? I mean, do you know the way other departments do it? And do you think the way we do it is better? Or is it just different per town, per city?
It's different per town and city. Indianapolis does it different than we do. They may have a couple different rank structures. So like the Allen County Sheriff's Department, Allen County Police Department, I think is officially what they're called. They have a corporal position. We don't have that position.
Oh, interesting.
So there's a little nuance to every department depending on how your rank structure is set up. I don't know that ours is any better or any worse. It just works for us. It has been working. I mean, I'm sure you'll get argument from some people that it doesn't work.
Sure.
But
you're always going to have,
Yeah, but overall, I think it's a pretty good structure. I just wish we had more females and
leadership
people
roles.
of color in leadership roles. But, we've got to test for those positions. And sometimes, it's just, it's hard. I'll say this, and as a female, it's hard. It's hard because I come to work, I do my job, I do a really good job, I work a lot of extra hours. then I have to go home and I have to do the whole mom duty stuff. So when am I going to have time to study? I don't have a spouse that's going to do all those duties for me.
Let me point that out. The single mom duties.
The single mom duties, the only parent duties, I'll say.
Exactly.
Because my kids don't go anywhere on the weekends. They're still with me because I'm an only parent.
Right.
And so it's harder for females. And I think it's just traditionally, and say what you will, it shouldn't or should be like this, but I think traditionally that the home and family really leans more towards the mom figure handling it all.
Yeah.
So unless you've got a husband or a partner that's really going to step up for you, and a lot of them do, but it's still, I think as women, we kind of take this on this position where like, I need to do this.
Yeah.
That's what I need to do as a mom.
Well, let's talk about you actually for a second, because you are a captain within the Fort Wayne Police Department. And I know, and because we've talked about this, I was under the impression, because Fort Wayne, where we live, we have 4 quadrants, right? I just assumed, and I don't even know why I assumed this. I don't know where I got it from. I assumed that we then had 4 captains within the Fort Wayne Police Department, 1 for each quadrant. But that's not the case.
It is not the case. So we do have 1 for each quadrant, but we also have 1 in vice narcotics. We have 2 in the Detective Bureau. We have 1 at the academy, and then we have 1 administrative captain.
Are you the first or one of the first female captains for the Fort Wayne Police Department?
I am preceded, I believe, by 4 other women.
So not a lot.
4 other women have preceded me. I think the highest rank any female's ever gotten here is deputy chief.
And I don't know if listeners know this, because we are radio. We are not television, unless they have seen you when you were in the public information officer role. You're also a minority.
Yes.
So are you the first female minority by chance?
I am not.
Okay.
Deb Joyner was before me. She was a captain and also a female of color. So.
But still, we're talking 2.
But
okay,
I will say
right?
she was a female black. The other 3 females were female whites. I'm the first Latina.
That's cool.
Captain. I think I'm the highest ranking Latina ever on the department.
Oh, wow. Sophia, I didn't know that.
And I was just, as we were talking about doing the show, and I was thinking, I think I'm it, because Sylvia Lopez, she was a sergeant, but that's all the further she wanted.
So to get to captain, did you also go through then, you went from probation to patrol officer to sergeant, lieutenant. Did you climb that ladder and do all those tests?
I did not take the lieutenant's test. So once you test for sergeant, you can be appointed to any rank.
Right, well, that's what I was wondering.
Except for lieutenant, because that's a merit rank. You have to test for that one. Any position, captain or above, you can be appointed to once you're in the sergeant's position. But you have to be in the sergeant's position to get appointed to anything higher. You can't be a patrolman. So
did you throw this bait out there to the deputy chief at the time, or even the chief, hey, I want to be a captain? Or did they come to you? How does that, I guess, work?
I think for me, when I was in that role as public information officer, I will say this, I rock that position.
You totally rock it. Honestly, I deal with a lot of PIOs. A lot of PIOs, not just for the Fort Wayne Police Department, but everybody, every organization, agency, they all have PIOs. And let me tell you, there's a big difference between the good ones and the bad ones.
Yeah, I enjoyed the job.
You were fantastic.
I enjoyed the job.
So we met, kind of.
Yes, it is how we met.
Not in person.
But I enjoyed that. I enjoy people. I enjoy explaining things so people have facts, facts over emotions, right? So I enjoy explaining those facts to people. And honestly, I think people would come to me and be like, oh my gosh, you're just so relatable. I'm like, well, you don't use police jargon. I'm like, look, I'm talking to you as a mom.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm a police officer, but mom first. I'm a member of this community first, and then I'm a police officer. So when I want to explain something to you, I don't want it to be over your head. I don't want to use jargon that's
why you're so good on this show, Sophia.
I just want to plain speak people, and I don't need to prove that I'm smarter than you or I know more than you. That doesn't get you anywhere. Let's just have a conversation.
So you're serving as the PIO, doing an impeccable job. I'd say that to your face, behind your back. In fact, I've said it behind your back of how great you were at that job. But you're in that role, doing a very impressive job. And is that when then you were approached about becoming a captain?
Well, no, we didn't even know this spot was going to open up. So we had someone leave a position, a deputy chief's position, and the chief then took deputy chief or captain then Mitch McKinney and moved him to deputy chief. He told the chief that he wanted me as his captain over Southeast.
Oh, cool.
And we kept community relations because while he was the captain of community relations, I was really instrumental in helping him kind of do everything because he couldn't do it all himself. So I would schedule, I would show up at events, and I would talk to people. I'd have discussions with groups, panels, whatever. And so he asked me if I would do that, and I'm like, yes. But at first, it was going to be captain over community relations. But I know we've said in the show before that I love the street.
Yeah.
I love patrol, right? So I told the chief when I had my interview with him, I'm like, I just don't want you to forget me. I will do community relations as as a captain. Hands down, love it. But I don't want you to lose me in terms of policing. So then he was thinking about it, and then Deputy Chief Mitch McKinney was like, why don't we just do both? I'm like, okay,
here we go.
So we set on this venture.
How long have you been serving as a captain then?
It'll be 2 years in April.
2 years in April.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Or 2 years this month, right? It's April.
I just say wow. So like right now, we're like 2 years.
Yeah, it's coming up on my 2-year mark.
Gotcha. So and you don't even have to necessarily say what, but do you have plans where you would like to see yourself go even higher on the ladder?
I just like to say I like to keep my options open, wherever that takes me.
My husband and I always say we never say never, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I really like my position now. I like working for Deputy Chief Mitch McKinney, but if he goes higher, will I go higher? I don't know. We'll see. But my options aren't always just here either. I'm going to be 52 years old this year, which means I will be eligible for my pension. So I can go at any time. Hint, if anyone's looking for a position.
I say, well, that's kind of scary, though. Don't leave us.
I am available after July. No.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, shameless plug. But yeah, I just want to keep my options open.
Yeah.
If the good Lord sees fit to put me in a position that's higher with more responsibility, then that will be his call, and I will take up the cause as it may be. Yeah.
We are way out of time. But if you have missed any previous episodes of Unholstered, this is just the tip of the iceberg. If you feel like me, like you learned a lot today, you're going to learn a ton from the previous episodes of Unholstered. You can download it anywhere you download a podcast. Your town, your team, your topics. This is Unholstered.
Thanks for listening to Unholstered. Be sure to subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen. And remember, you can listen every Saturday morning at 10:30 on WOWO 1190 and 107.5 FM.
Podcasts by Federated Media.